With the first pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the New Orleans Pelicans select Zion Williamson from Duke.
Up for the layup! Oh, blocked by James! They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan. Right back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang! Mamba out.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Shot Clock Podcast. Today we got on Josh Williams. There's a lot been going on in the world lately. A lot of it's very cruel. The protests speak for itself, being able to disagree with what's going on in the world. Josh, I want to bring you on a little bit. Talk a little bit about how you feel about what we saw with the George Floyd incident.
I really wasn't happy about what happened because he didn't deserve to die. He didn't I don't know if he did something wrong, but just watching that video, it's disgusts me every time I look at it. And I can understand why people are protesting, but the violent protests, those need to stop because people are destroying people's stores that they've worked so hard to build and make money off of, and people are just destroying what they worked so hard for. And I don't think it's right. And burning the American flag, that's not right either, because there's people who die fighting for us having freedom and freedom of speech, and people burning that's very disrespectful, and I'm not okay with it.
You mentioned the American flag incident, but one other thing that correlates with the American flag and Black Lives Matter movement was Colin Kaepernick whenever he kneeled during the national anthem.
Yeah.
Were you pro for that or con?
Really? I guess I was in between, because Black African Americans, in my opinion, we have not. I would say we have not been treated the same as the white man, and they haven't been listening when they protested before, because all this like police brutality between blacks and whites has been going on for so long, and nobody's doing anything about it. I think he started to kneel because nobody was noticing that they're protesting and stuff like that, and they wouldn't listen. So he did that as a stand to, I guess, the U.S. to tell them to, like, have people notice and stuff like that. And so I was kind of in between. Like I still think you stand for the national anthem. I'm not saying that because people fight for our freedom, and that's not correct. But he did that for a reason to protest. So I'm in between.
So with the Black Lives Matter movement, has there been any time that you've been directly affected because of your skin color?
Yeah, I've grown up Connersville, all white town, so I've been hearing slurs since like 3rd, 4th grade, but I really don't want to bother anymore because people just do that because they're insecure or they just think it's funny, and I don't let it bother me. I don't let it get to my head. I'll say, okay, that's funny, and leave it alone. I won't tell them to stop because I really don't care. But yeah, it's been happening to me and James for a while, so we're getting through it.
What was one of your first experiences with a white man using that word against you?
I think it was at school, and some kid I think I got in the lunch line in front of him. I said that's so stupid. I got in front of him in the lunch line first, and he called me a stupid. So that the first when I was a little kid, I really didn't understand how bad that word was really, and growing up now, seeing how much I heard that word when I was a kid, how much it has affected me and it has not, and that first experience I really wasn't affected because I really didn't know what it meant. I said, "Oh, you shouldn't say that," and stuff like that, but I didn't think it was that big of a deal because there really wasn't that much of a conflict back then, between whites and blacks. There was still there was a lot of black on black crime, I guess, back then. And nowadays, it's just police brutality is what's causing all this trouble. And also, not all police forces are bad either. I'll say that too, because our Connersville Police Department is really good guys, really nice. And you can't just look at, since one police officer does something disgusting, you can't just put that image on every other single police guy. You can't just say that. That's just like that's hypocritical.
You had I'm pretty sure you had a conversation with the police officers shortly after the George Floyd incident. You,
Yes,
your brother,
yeah.
and your family. So, what
Mhm.
was a little bit that went on in that conversation?
We went there and talked to Mr. Frank and the police chief and one of the police officers because we want to start Connersville. I'll say people just say it. There isn't like issues like hate against blacks. They just like saying that word, and there's a lot of like every single kid here like smokes or does something, and police officers have to arrest them. And like if they have little siblings, say like a sophomore at our school got like arrested for smoking weed, and their little brother or sister sees him being arrested, and they think, oh, that guy's bad because he's arresting my brother, and it's not their fault. They're just doing their jobs. And so we went there, talked to him, and we're gonna start like, well, my mom was on local TV3 last night. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're gonna start doing stuff like that, and we're gonna start like a community outreach, so like where you can just like hang out with the police officers, like start playing basketball with them and stuff like that. So the community can be tight with them and not think, oh, they're just arresting my parents because they did something wrong. They're not bad guys and stuff like that. And little kids can just know them as an ally and not an enemy.
You brought up your mom going on TV3 yesterday. So you come from a mixed family. Your dad's black, your mom's white.
Yeah.
Has there been any time where someone's used your interraciality against you?
Yeah. People make fun of me all the time because they say, "Are you even black?" and stuff like that because I have a white mom and stuff. And you look at me and you, my skin color, yours, I'm black. And you can say whatever you want about it, but that's the facts. If me versus a white person, I'm black. And I don't know why it's funny because my dad's like super dark, my mom's like super white. So I can understand why people think it's funny, but it really isn't.
What do you directly say to people whenever they've brought up that to you?
I really, like I said earlier, I don't find it offensive. I usually just say, okay, dude, stuff like that, and I really don't let it affect me. And that right there, nobody should make fun of you for having different colored parents. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And it was hated on back in like the 1800s when slavery was still a thing. Like, a black guy couldn't even talk to a white woman without getting like hung. And nowadays, since things have changed, we have rights now. Like, slavery was abolished, so I can understand why people from the South, like Confederates and stuff like that, can like still hate a race. But we have rights just the same as you, so you shouldn't have the right to racially slur against us, or I don't know, man.
You brought up slavery in there.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned before, like, you didn't really know the use of the N-word until you kind of got older as time went on.
Yeah.
So when you first learned about slavery, what do you remember like thinking as being a black person that could have been affected by that if that was during your time?
Well, really thinking about it, it really would have sucked, dude. Like, nobody, even white people can say this, nobody wants to go through slavery. Like, literally, you have to work for another race because the color of your skin. Like, it's just totally messed up. It's disgusting. And I really like learning about that subject in history class because it's awesome. I love learning about it. Like, what happened wasn't great, but learning about like my roots and stuff like that, and learning about the history of like black leaders like Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, guys like that, and women like that. They're just like really inspirational. Learning about their stories and what they did to fight for their rights was pretty cool. So I love learning about it. And when I first learned about it, I really wasn't impressed. Like what grade, James? What grade do you think I learned about that? Like 4th, 5th?
Probably, yeah.
Like something like in elementary school, we started learning about that. And like I knew about it before because my parents taught me when I was a little kid. Like, these are things you can't do and stuff like that because of your skin color. And I really didn't understand, but now since I've grown up and seen and watched like documentaries and read articles and stuff like that, I really learned how messed up it was, and now I really take it into realization and see how bad it is.
You personally, from that time, we've seen like the growth of the power within the Black community of how they've
Yeah.
affected the world. So how do you think that growth has kind of gone on in your own opinion?
I would say that, well, like, so Martin Luther King had those protests, like peaceful protests, and some white people started to realize that, okay, this is totally wrong, and so they started to march with them, and they got hated on. And now, like back then, when Colin Kaepernick started kneeling, it was I think it was just violent protests. I think because Americans, they were angry that he wasn't standing during the national anthem, and then blacks were like they were standing up for it because they say, you guys aren't listening to us any other way, so this is one way we can do. It's one way we can show you that we want to have rights just the same as you and stuff like that. And I think the community has definitely grown more together and close, because some black people didn't care back then, like police brutality, because some just say, oh, rest in peace and stuff like that, and they really don't know the story. They just want to act like they're with that group of people, and they just want to like post that. People sign up and say, oh, I'm sorry and stuff like that. And now there's more people saying, okay, we're together. I want to show them that we want to have rights too and stuff like that.
So one thing I've kind of noticed with everything going on is there's a lot of people of white color that will go on social media and post about everything going on. Like the Blackout Tuesday event that went on, there's a lot of white people that went and did that.
Mm-hmm.
But then they'll go back later and like there'll be something that comes out that they used the racial slur or so on. So
Yeah.
what's your thoughts on all of that kind of?
Well, I don't think you should post it. If you're gonna post Blackout Tuesday, you need to support the cause and not say that word. You can't just post, oh, rest in peace, George Floyd, and I support the protests and stuff like that. And then when you're hanging out with friends, you're just gonna say the N-word. Like listening to music, okay, that word's in music a lot, and people like to sing the song. So that's not that much big of a deal. But when you're calling someone that's way different. You can't post Blackout Tuesday, rest in peace, George Floyd, and stuff like that, and then go and say that word. I really don't respect that.
How do friends of, what do you think of, because a lot of the big problem is what people have talked about is that people are not speaking out. People aren't using a platform to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like we saw where the Knicks were slandered the other day because they made a statement 2 weeks later, and the statement looked like it could have been written by a preschooler. So how do you kind of think of those people that are sitting by rather than actually speaking out in the action?
They lack courage. I think they need to stand up and say what's right and not be afraid of what other people think. You stand up. You freedom of speech. This is America. You have a freedom of speech, and you could stand up for what's right and say what's right. And you shouldn't worry about if you're standing up for something good. Like people say, okay, people making fun of Down syndrome kids. That's not okay. That's not their fault. They were born that way. So people shouldn't make fun of them. And if you want to stand up for Down syndrome awareness, then that's good. And don't let people mess with you saying, oh, why'd you do that and stuff like that? Because I support them, and you guys shouldn't make fun of them and stuff like that.
Has there been any fear that's been inducted to you since all this has kind of gone? Well, I mean, we've seen police brutality amongst the Black culture for a long time now, but has there been any fear that's directly hit you home since you've kind of recently brought to the real world it's starting to speak out on?
Not really, because the way I've been raised is my mom, since she's white, and my dad, who was born in the 60s in Selma, Alabama, like where racism was, like the tension was really bad when he grew up. And the first thing I think remember growing up when I first started learning about that was like always listen to what the police officer says and stuff like that. So I know how to deal with that kind of stuff. And living in Connersville, how tiny the community is, I've like, since Gavin Jones, his dad works for like the sheriff department, and growing up, being close with those guys, I really have no fear with police officers. Like maybe like Indianapolis, since like hold on, let me see. There's more black people in Indianapolis, right? And more bad stuff happens down there. And police officers might have a different opinion when I'm there, and they might not know who I am. But I know how to deal with them. Like you always listen to what they say, and like never put your hands on. You always show them your hands, stuff like that. And so the way I've been raised has really helped me with police officers, and I'm not afraid.
You mentioned your dad grew up in a really strongly racist tension in Alabama. Yeah. What's some of the stories he's told you that's really stuck out to you that you've kind of acknowledged a lot?
Just like how he grew up, and just like the white and black water fountains, stuff like that. And he went to a school and he didn't have that good of grades. Wait, Mom, come here. Oh, I'm gonna have my mom talk to you about it because she knows more about it. Talk to her.
Hello, good people.
So I asked Josh about his dad telling him stories about growing up in Alabama and where it was strongly racist and the tensions were strong. And I asked him if he could tell us a little bit about some of the stories. So what's some of the stories that he's told you?
Well, the main thing, he honestly doesn't share too much, I think, because it's pretty painful to relive it. And he's considers himself very blessed to live here because we don't experience the things that he grew up with, which is a gift. You know, we have to in times like today to point ourselves to what is good that we have here. And we're very blessed in our community that we really live in a place of peace and harmony. But to your question, the main thing that he's really shared with us is the discrepancy in education and how black students were not taught like white kids were in the same classroom. You know, we can't imagine that blatant in front of our face, basically racism. And one story that he tells is that he was taught to say big word. If he didn't know the word when they were learning how to read, he and the black kids in his class were just taught, just say big word. And he noticed as he grew up that when they were reading, the black kids would say big word, and there was big word, and that happened, big word. And he was like, I know that's not right. So he started paying attention to the teacher teaching the white students how to pronunciate, how to sound out things. So just things like that that's foreign to us. You know, we don't experience that in our community. Obviously, we would like to have more people of color in our teaching staff. That would be great. But that kind of stuff, and just crime and how the police were pretty corrupt where he grew up, just because they were jaded and it didn't matter. They didn't have a standard that they had to be held to then. So he'd really be better to speak to all that than me. But those are some of the main things that I recall, and just reiterating to our sons that they really are fortunate because, you know, you think about what's that, 60 years? That seems like a long time, but you think, well, we should probably be better off than we should probably be more advanced than we are, but try to be thankful for where we came from, you know. Try to keep a positive attitude.
I have another question for you. So being married to a man of color, have you ever faced criticism from that?
Yes, not necessarily. It's more covert. People aren't necessarily, well, there has been some to my face, but not really locally. More in the South. I think that our marriage is more disapproved of maybe outwardly in the South than it is here. But I mean, there's covert things, you know, people will shake their heads. Like if we're at restaurants, if I make eye contact, I'm very people oriented. So I'm always paying attention to people around me and the emotional space that they're in. And just because I work in mental health and things like that you just have to learn to disregard. My husband kind of trained me, honestly, in it, and just like, you just have, because he's lived with it his whole life. Me, it was a new thing for me at about 28 years old. So I did not realize the extent of covert racism. People who have biases and they don't really even know they're doing that stuff. That's the interesting thing. They don't even realize that they are showing favoritism or lack thereof to a person of color. I don't think they realize they're doing it. And that's what's tough to change. And having these conversations helps, to help evaluate yourself and look within and say, well, where do I have biases? I have biases. It's not necessarily towards Black people, but I have biases, so, and those are wrong. So we all have to do our part to examine ourselves and say, where do I have feelings of ill will towards somebody? And maybe I was taught that, maybe I was lied to. Where did I get that information? Why do I think that way? Self-examination, I think, is the key to fixing this whole thing, and having conversations like you, having conversations with people and asking questions and saying, now, where can I be better? Where can I help stand up for you? Or how can I give my voice to help? And that shows people you care. Or say, I lack courage, and that day I saw that happen to you, and I lack courage saying something myself, but I want you to know that I really cared about that. Those are powerful moments for all of us that we can learn in and to grow.
I have another question for you. So with raising two sons of Black color, and where do you see their lifetime being with racism? We see the trend of it. So where do you think it's going to be within their lifetime?
Well, obviously I hope that they are given the opportunity that my white son was. That's what you hope for. You hope that they have the same, people receive them with the same heart, or they don't automatically form an opinion about them based on how they appear. And that's just all of us being a little deeper in our thoughts. You know what I mean? It starts with all of us. And I think for us, my mission has always been, and my husband's too, is that we have to use the opportunity we have. We're all responsible for what we teach other people, right? So in our neighborhood, we don't move from here because we know everybody across the street on our entire block, everybody on my side of the block. We know all these people. And if my kids had a problem, they could go to any of the houses on my block and all of these people would help them. Probably be nicer to them than me. So, like if they got hit or something, I had a son get hit by a car, not the boys, but my older boy. And the lady 5 doors down was at the scene in front of my very house before I even got out the door. So that resonates with me. When you're a person, you're in community, you choose to be in community. So we choose to have relationships with our neighbors over 15 years, right? They may not have been crazy about us moving in here initially, but now it's like our family. Like we tell them when we're going on vacation, we have meals here at our house and invite them over. So we have to also make the choice, because we can say, well, they don't like us and shut our door and stay inside, right? We can make that choice, but then we're responsible then in part to how we're received. So we have to put ourselves out there and come in relationship with people and say, this is what we're about. This is what we stand for. This is what we represent and what we want to be about. And I think in doing that, it holds my kids accountable to other people. You know what I mean? I feel better about that as a parent. If you're in relationship with a whole block of adults who are going to be watching over you and care about you, we're better for that. But I think the tendency may be, if you are a minority in a primarily whatever neighborhood, if I'm a white lady in a Black neighborhood, I may not extend myself socially like that. Same with Blacks in white neighborhoods. We may not just go out and meet our neighbors and be like, hey, what's up? And talk about your flower garden or whatever. So it takes risk on all of our part. And I think that's what we have chosen to do, to come in relationship. And that's the biggest thing. That's my biggest thing about what's going on right now. We have to come in relationship with people that aren't like us. And that's how we create a better world. And that's how their future will be improved. The more people that we can be in relationship with which are different, we're smarter because we're learning from them. If we just hang around with ourselves all the time, how do we learn and how do we grow? So that's kind of my mission for them. And I'm hoping that we promote that as their parents. and to, obviously try to be involved in the community in some way. And if you're going to be seen by the public, like the boys play sports, hey, I get them volunteering and stuff. They have to be seen by the white community as more than just a basketball player. So we help at Gleaners. They help unload the truck. They go down and help direct traffic. Like, there's things that they, in my opinion, they have to do to have people understand who they are. And that may not be totally fair, but I think it helps them. So why not?
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Emma. I'm going to go talk to Josh.
Josh says I need to leave.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to him a little bit before this goes, but thank you, Emma. All right, Josh. Before we close this off, how do you think so the NBA is returning, and we see a lot where NBA players use their platform being before games, wearing shirts. How do you think this is going to affect them in the NBA with using their platform?
Oh, definitely a lot. It's gonna. I think there's gonna be a lot of like George Floyd stuff, maybe like some custom shoes, like something like that. And I'm not sure how the NBA commissioners are gonna feel like, or how the NBA is gonna feel about it in general. But once again, they have rights and they can do what they want, and they can fine them if they have to. But I feel like most of them will do it anyway and get fined because what's going on? They want to prove a point. And looking on Instagram everywhere, all these NBA players, professional athletes in general, just out at protests, like helping out, passing out water, food, stuff like that. It's really inspirational. And okay, hold on, this dog's playing with me. Okay, it's just really inspirational and stuff like that. And I really like it. I like watching Steven Jackson, George Floyd's daughter. That was really cool. I was impressed. And just Giannis passing out water, Malcolm Brogdon talking in Atlanta. Well, I don't know if that was part. That wasn't. LeBron riding his bike in LA. That wasn't part of anything. But yeah, just seeing all of them out there helping out, it's really gonna. I think it'll make a difference. It makes a difference in a tiny way. No.
All right, Josh. So I'm going to go ahead and close this off. I appreciate you coming on and talking about it.
Yep.
Do you have any final words to say about what's all going on?
Black Lives Matter, man.
All right. Thank you, Josh. I'll be sure to catch up with you again. And be sure to check this out on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Anchor, and everything else. Check us out on Instagram at the Shot Clock Pod. Again, we'll see you later.